All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are joining us from. Welcome. Welcome to another edition of Scrum Pulse. Today we are gathered here, dearly beloved. We are gathered here today to learn about how we can scale Scrum with Nexus, Confluence, Jira, the Atlassian suite. And our goal here is to give you a roadmap, step-by-step approach that you can follow. So I'm seeing people trickling in. So I would like to give maybe just a second for the attendee count to stabilize. And we are there. All right, so let's dive in. My name is Ravi Verma. I will be your moderator today and maybe do a little bit of presenting. But really, I'm here to hold space for two of our stars, that is Shari Barchus and Robert Adler, who will show us how to merge and integrate the chocolatey goodness of Scrum and Nexus with the peanut buttery goodness of Atlassian. So that's why we are here. So let's dive in. Logistics, your microphones are muted, but I've got the chat panel pulled up. I'll also have the Q&A panel pulled up. So I'll be monitoring your questions and comments along the way. And I will try my best to weave them into the flow of the webinar as best as possible. Some others we'll try and get addressed at the end of the webinar. And those that can not be addressed during the webinar, we'll try our best to follow up with emails after the webinar. Okay. The recording will be available on our YouTube channel. This is going to be a very jam-packed presentation. So it's possible that there will be some nuances that are hard to absorb. This is a fairly advanced topic. So the recording will be available after the session is over, so you can go through it. The slides will also be available on the Scrum.org Scrum Pulse webinar page for this session. All right. Ask lots of questions along the way, and we'll try our best to adapt the flow of the webinar within certain constraints, so you get value from this conversation, right? Michael is asking, will the slides be available and the recording? Yes, slides will be available on the Scrum.org webpage, webinar webpage, recording on the Scrum.org YouTube channel. Follow the YouTube channel if you haven't already, you'll get notified, right? All right, let's dive in. A little bit about Scrum.org. So what Ken Schwaber and Scrum.org have done is that they have created a community, a worldwide community of people who have complementary strengths, but who have shared principles and values. And we are all inspired by one true north. And that true north is helping people and teams solve complex problems. That's who we are. That's what we do. How do we do it? One is through thought leadership. We create blogs, videos, webinars where we come up with ideas to guide the world towards the shared goal. We productize it through training, our workshops. We help you validate your knowledge through certifications. And then we give you free curated content for ongoing learning beyond your training, beyond your certification. And we've got more than 400 mission-driven practitioners across the world who are trying lots of experiments and who are sharing the results of these experiments. And really, Scrum.org is a curator for community wisdom. So if you are inspired by our true north and our principles and values, come join us. Let's help the world solve complex problems together. All right, brief introductions. So you get a chance to know who we are and what gives us credibility to talk about what we are talking about. So Shari, could you get us started, please?
Hi, everyone. I'm Shari Barchus, and I'm the founder of Fringe Technology, and our office is located in Arizona. Soon we'll be celebrating our 12th anniversary as an Atlassian solution partner. And so the consultants on our team, like Robert, who's here with us today, really enjoy showing organizations how to use the power of the Atlassian tools to their full advantage. And at the same time, we work with their team members to increase productivity, product quality, communication, and work better together. And that makes them happy and us as well. So we truly love what we do, and we're excited to be here with you today and help you on your journey with Nexus.
All right. Thank you, Shari. Robert.
I'm Robert. I've been with Fringe for about 6 years as an agile coach and Atlassian tools expert. And we've been just working with dozens of companies and organizations, all the way from 10 plus users to companies that are in the thousands and tens of thousands of employees. And prior to that, I spent about 10 years at Sony as a product owner for our video asset management systems, and also led the team that transcoded all of our Sony music videos, the entire catalog, and we put that over to YouTube. So if you've ever been rickrolled, you can thank my team for that.
All right. Thank you, Robert. All right, a little bit about myself. My name is Ravi Verma. I'm a Scrum.org professional Scrum trainer. I'm the founder and org whisperer CEO at SmoothApps, and I just founded another startup product called Al Dente, which is a way to create dashboards and scoreboards for evidence-based management. Let's talk about my scaling experience. So I've helped companies scale Scrum, starting from 5 Scrum teams and maybe about 200 people, to being an enterprise agile coach for a company with 5,000 people in IT, 350 agile teams, and 10,000 people total, to being a scaling coach for a company with 500 plus agile teams. So along the way, I've made lots and lots of mistakes. And the reason I'm excited about this session is I've actually worked with Shari and Robert in real world clients, trying lots of different scaling experiments with Scrum, Nexus, Nexus Plus, and Atlassian. And what we have tried to do in this paper is to learn from all the mistakes, to avoid them, and give you a step-by-step approach that you can use as a starting point in your scaling journey. So that's a little bit about ourselves, what background we have, also a little bit about maybe the theoretical underpinnings to today's conversation. So I had the blessing to be trained in Nexus by Ken Schwaber, the creator of Nexus. I got trained on SAFe by Dean Leffingwell, and I'm SAFe certified, and I got trained by Craig Larman, the co-creator of the LESS framework, and I'm LESS certified. So not only do we have on this webinar panel practical experience, we also have solid theoretical knowledge of the dominant scaling frameworks in our industry. All right. With that, let's dive in. So ideally, you might get the most out of this conversation if you're already familiar with Jira and Confluence, you have experience with professional Scrum, single team Scrum, and you're either evaluating different scaling frameworks and trying to figure out, well, should I use Nexus or not? Or maybe you're already using Nexus and you hit some bumps in the road and you're wondering, you're curious, I wonder if there's a better way to do this. And also you're curious about integrating Nexus with Jira and Confluence. Now, if you don't fit this demographic, don't worry. After this webinar, we have an online white paper. Go look at that. And the white paper includes some self-help links for you to solidify your knowledge of Scrum and Nexus and Atlassian. All right. Okay, so let's dive in. Here are some topics we're going to cover today. We'll talk about a typical scaling scenario, which might be comparable to what you are facing in your company. We'll tell you what typically Robert, Shari, and I have seen as companies, as a typical first attempt for companies when they try to scale, often what challenges they face without the structured approach that we are about to share here. And then what we are hoping that might help if you take the structured approach, and what we have observed in our real world clients when they do take the structured approach. So we'll tell you 10 key decisions. Then Robert is going to show you an actual Jira and advanced roadmaps for Jira Cloud instance, where he has applied this approach. Shari is going to take over and talk about Confluence. She's going to show the actual Confluence workspace. And then we'll wrap up and we'll leave you with some closing thoughts to crystallize our learning and what you can do next. So that is the structure of our webinar. Before we go further, we would love to find out what is the most important burning question that got you here. So if you don't mind, those who are interested, take a moment, use the chat panel and answer, type in your most important burning question that you would like to get answered. And I'll be monitoring the panel and we'll try and integrate as many of your questions as possible. I will probably give you 60 seconds. And then we will integrate other questions along the way as they come along. This is your chance to influence the flow of this webinar so you maximize your value. All right. How to have one product backlog set up with multiple Scrum teams. How to best manage dependencies. How to use a tool with Nexus. What real-life problems will scaling solve? Tracking dependencies between Scrum teams and Nexus using Jira. All right. Getting started with Nexus. Number one recommendation to give someone wanting to use Jira with Nexus. All right. All right. Excellent. Great questions. Great questions. Excellent. All right. I'm seeing some questions about what is the difference between Nexus and Safe? What scaling framework shall I use? How can I learn more about Nexus? So I just want to clarify and set expectations. We have other webinars in, we're going to have some other webinars in Scrum.org, which will go into the depths of Nexus. That's coming up in December and Jan. So please stay tuned. This webinar is not to teach you the difference between Nexus and Safe. It's laser focused on how do you implement Nexus using Jira, advanced roadmaps for Jira, and Confluence. Okay. So we'll try our best to answer some of your other framework oriented questions offline and point you to upcoming resources. All right. Very good. Thank you so much for giving me a sense for where you're at so we can maximize your value. All right. So let me give you a case study. This is the backbone of our conversation. So the story begins with a company called Global Car Rentals. Okay. Think of it as Hertz. Maybe it's a company like Hertz, Avis. And so their business is hit by COVID. So they say, aha, let us capitalize on this opportunity. Let's go and acquire a company like DoorDash, FoodFast, and another company like Instacart. And together we are going to create an integrated company, all right? All three companies use Scrum, Jira, and Confluence. So their idea was, let's all integrate, create one integrated platform where people can rent a car, they can get their food delivered, they can get their groceries delivered. So they decided to have 3 products, 3 product owners, 3 Scrum teams, and 3 different cadences. And they tried to integrate using some techniques, maybe like a Scrum of Scrums, maybe once a week or so. Here's what happened. It was pure hell. They all had different definitions of done, security standards. So they had security breaches. User experience was disjointed because everybody had their own UX, the different UI color schemes. Tech support got bombarded because the customer experience of using 3 disjointed products was very confusing. Customers got frustrated because the 3 products don't work well with each other. And then finally, the team got demoralized and many of the best team members resigned from the company. Okay, so they decided, they had a retrospective and they made a decision. They are just going to have one and only one outcome, business outcome for success. They will have one product, not 3 products, one product, integrated platform as a product. They will have one and only one product backlog. They will have one product owner. They will exist as one team, not 3 companies, 3 teams. They're going to use the Nexus framework. They will have one source of truth, whether it's Confluence or Jira, one workspace, one culture, one definition of done, one way to refine and manage dependencies across multiple teams, and one cadence. So one synchronization, one cadence for Scrum. All right. So these are 10 crucial decisions that they made. This is important because if you don't make the right organizational decision, Nexus and Atlassian will just help you drive your car into the ditch faster, better, cheaper. All right. So our goal is that we help you be more effective, not help you be more efficient at doing the wrong thing. All right. So we use Nexus. If you look at Nexus, very similar to Scrum, one product backlog, one product owner, all the teams, they do refinement together. Representatives do refinement. They do planning together. They have one Nexus sprint backlog. They have one Nexus daily Scrum. They are integrating or frequently aligning micro-planning every day. They have one common review. They have one common retrospective. Okay. Very similar to Scrum. If you have ever tried to be an enterprise agile coach for a 5,000 person or 10,000 person company and if you have tried to train 5,000 people on a scaling framework, you will understand how crucial simplicity is. The more complex a framework, the harder it is to explain it, and the harder yet it is to implement it effectively. All right. So with that, I am going to hand over the baton to Robert. Robert is going to summarize the guiding principle or the guiding approach that he would recommend on scaling with Jira and advanced roadmaps. And then he's going to take over and actually show you the sandbox. Robert, take it away.
Hey, thanks, Ravi. First, I wanted to say it's just an honor and a privilege to be here with you. And yeah, just talking about stuff that we're super passionate about. I know everybody's excited to see the tools in action, but before we dive into it, if it's okay, I'd like to spend just a few minutes talking about sort of the whys, right, and explain a little bit about our design principles and philosophy. So you may be in a similar situation as we're often in, as tool administrators, and we're approached by a leadership team in a company, and they'll go, hey, we heard about the scaled Scrum thing. We need you to build a solution in Jira tomorrow. Oh, and by the way, here's a super set of, complex set of requirements to help us feel like we can maintain our control. And then usually the next part is, oh, and no, we don't trust any of our developers. Now, as somebody with an engineering background, my gut reaction is to immediately come up with a super complex solution without ever considering if I'm over engineering something, or maybe just building a solution for something that shouldn't exist in the first place. And then usually my mentors like, Ravi and Shari, they'll come and smack my hands and sort of remind me of one of the first principles in the Agile Manifesto. And that's individuals and interactions over processes and tools. And I'm always trying to, challenge myself and others by asking the question, are we designing and configuring the tools to support and elevate the individuals and interactions of Scrum, in the Nexus framework? So over the past couple of years, we worked with a lot of companies and organizations, both big and small, to help them implement scaled Scrum in their Jira instances. And we've done, a lot of real world experiments. We've experienced both successes and also lots of failures. And I think there's a quote out there, something like, if things are not failing, you aren't innovating enough. So, we try to embrace our failures. And what we try to do is to simplify our approach and consolidate, all of our lessons learned from our previous failures, as well as our successes. So by no means, are the steps that we've outlined in the white paper or the things that I'm going to be showing you today, they're not, it's not a one size fits all. You will all need to sort of, take the things that we were talking about today, back to your organizations and teams and adapt the solutions, as needed. And I think it's important to sort of keep in mind to use, an empirical approach, even when building, our tool solutions, in Jira and in Confluence. I think oftentimes we overlook that part of it. And I don't think your aim should be to have like a perfect solution right out of the gate. The aim isn't, hey, we're going to show you this in, 10 or 20 minutes. And you'll just be able to, come out of this meeting and say, hey, we're going to be able to set configure everything and it's going to be absolutely perfect. Please take a moment, maybe after the first sprint or two, and just, take a moment to inspect, how the team is interacting with the tools and with each other, and, make adjustments, on the configuration as needed. So keeping these principles in mind, let's take a little bit of a deeper look into how we can configure Jira and advanced roadmaps. And we'll be going through, the Jira project structure. We'll be talking about, what your Nexus backlog might look like. How to build and configure the individual Scrum team boards, and then we'll pop into advanced roadmaps and talk about mapping the boards and the teams, as well as using the roadmaps for some of our actual meetings that we're going to be having around our Nexus. So like things like cross team refinement, Nexus sprint planning. I also want to take a look at what does that actually look like, right, in terms of generating that bottom up intelligence, and how maybe we can do a little bit of forecasting based off the data that we're feeding Jira and being able to visualize there. And then if we have the time at the end, I'll talk about initiatives a little bit.
All right. Thank you, Robert, for summarizing. Robert, I will stop my share and then please take over the share when you're ready and we'll switch into your sandbox.
Okay. Sorry, that was the wrong one. Can you guys see what screen are you guys seeing?
So I was seeing the set failed car rental. There was a tab.
Sorry. Just give me 1 second. Oh, there it goes. Oh, can you guys see Jira?
Yes, we see the backlog.
Okay. Perfect. Thanks. Okay, so so in the white paper we actually outline all the steps. So if you guys after towards the end of the presentation we'll be sharing a link to the actual digital white paper, and it'll actually walk you through the step-by-step instructions for how to do all this configuration. For the sake of time, I've just sort of I set everything up according to the step-by-step white paper. And I just wanted to sort of take you through some of the basic configurations. And I just wanted to highlight some of the really important aspects of what you'll need to do to, to set up that configuration in Jira. So the first thing you want to do, and what I want to talk about is sort of the Jira structure. Now in Jira, we, sort of the highest level hierarchy that we have available is our Jira projects. And I really kind of dislike that, the projects terminology. But it's basically, just a bucket of, of PBIs, right, or items that, the team needs to work on. And I think it's really helpful, as a first step, to try your best to, consolidate, right? So with this, GCR company, global rental, they may have had a couple different teams. They're all using, maybe different Jira instances, or, at the very minimum, right, just different Jira projects. So the first thing I would probably, say to them is, hey, I think it might make sense to actually start structuring our Jira projects around the actual product itself. So maybe the teams are coming together and say, hey, you know what, we kind of want to start fresh. Let's create a new Jira project. Just based around the actual product, right, and the GCR application. So there's a bunch of reasons why I think that's beneficial, all right, to have a single project. And number one, it's so you see I created the GCR app project here. And one of the benefits that you get, right, is having a single list for all of your versions. As well as epics, and as well as sprints too. So you sort of have, it's like a one-stop shop, right? And it makes it really easy for maybe even new users that you're onboarding, just to come into Jira and easily navigate right to the application or the product that they're working on. It just makes it easy for them to find things. That's one of the biggest challenges, right, that we've seen joining a lot of organizations. We'll go into the Jira and it's like a gigantic mess. So a lot of times it's it's just a matter of cleaning things up, but really having that relationship between Jira projects and product makes things nice and clean and concise. One of the other big benefits that you get out of it is it's really easy to then kind of standardize all the data, the definition of done, workflow, all the metrics, and the reporting between all of our Scrum teams, right, within our Nexus. So they're all using sort of the exact same approaches, right, in the tools, using the same workflows. In terms of the data, like what fields are we capturing and where those things are going. So there's a lot of advantages, right, to having a single project. And by nature, right, if you're just going in and creating a new project with a new board, that essentially becomes your Nexus backlog, right? It's just everything, all of our PBIs and things that we need to do for that one particular product. And by default, when you create a new project in Jira, it's going to automatically just pull everything in from that one project. So you can see I've titled this particular board that we're looking at right now the GCR App Nexus, right? So this is everything all together, anything that applies to this particular product. And so this becomes our source of truth, right? This is where the team is going. They're doing their ordering, and they're looking at sort of the things that they need to be working on, right? So they can, pop into their active sprint and see, hey, what do I need to sort of laser focus on, for the next, whatever, 1 to 4 weeks. So the next step is figuring out, okay, well, now we have everything right in this single, giant product backlog. Well, now how do we start, seeing that in, on the team levels? So, so the way we found that probably the easiest way to do that is to, I'm going to jump for a second into our the roadmap. So if you click the plans drop down and click view shared teams, it'll bring you to this screen. And I'm suggesting, creating shared teams, and you'll see why that's important, and a little bit later on when we actually get into advanced roadmaps. But this is super straightforward. You're just going to hit create team, give it a name, hit create, and start building out the different Scrum, the individual Scrum teams that you're going to have as part of your Nexus. You can add people in there. It's not really necessary. Now, the next step, and you can see as soon as you start building those shared teams, we actually now have the ability to do queries, right, based off of that team field, right? Because it's really just a field in Jira that we can write, JQL, right, the Jira query language, to actually build filters to start, sort of separating out the things for that particular team. And we can apply those JQL filters in a number of different ways. One of which you're probably all, if you're a Jira user, you're probably very familiar with the quick filters. So in this case, what I did was I just built 3 different quick filters for each one of our teams. So if the driver team is coming in here and they're just say, hey, I just want to see the stuff that, my team's focused on, they just hit the quick filter and boom, it's just going to filter out those items. And this is also going to apply on their active sprints too, right? So when they're looking at their active sprint, they click the button and boom, it just filters out the stuff that their team needs to be sort of laser focused on for that particular sprint. So the next thing you're going to want to do is you want to actually build, and I saw there was a question that popped up earlier that was, about like, well, hey, now that we have everything sort of all together, how do we start dividing this stuff, right? And we talked about the JQLs, but what you want to do is actually also build separate boards within the same project for each independent team. So you can see we actually have 4 boards in total in our GCR app project. And the one that we were just looking at, right, is our overall GCR app Nexus board. But we also have 3 other boards that are for each Scrum team. And the way to do that is just sort of exactly like I was talking about before. You'll want to just create a new board. And what you're going to do is edit this filter. You can actually build the board just based off of JQL if you want to do that ahead of time. And when you edit the actual JQL, you can actually just use that team field, right, that we're capturing out of advanced roadmaps, and you can build a filter out of it. So it's pretty easy to just you'll have to switch it into advanced mode because this field is only available in advanced JQL. But you can see it's pretty easy, as soon as you start typing the name, those team names will pop up for you, right, and it'll automatically switch to that number there. And that's it. So now that we have all of our individual Scrum team boards set up, let's go and dive a little bit into how do we go about creating a new advanced roadmap plans, and that's very straightforward. You can actually have a plan up and running in just a couple minutes. Right, so you're going to go to your plans drop down and hit create plan. Now it's going to take you through a really simple and straightforward wizard. The first screen is going to be about selecting your issue sources. So issue sources is just basically, hey, where do we for this particular plan, where does advanced roadmap need to look at, right, to go and pull all this stuff in. So you might be thinking, oh, I can just point it to the project and pull all that stuff in. While you absolutely can do that, we also have the ability to pull in stuff by boards. And you can see we have 3 different options here. So you can do it by board, project, or filter. I usually just, to make it really easy, I just pull in everything across all of our different boards. And you also might be thinking in your head, well, hey, if we have everything in the GCR app Nexus board, then why the heck do I need to pull in the rest of the individual team boards? And you'll see why that's important later on. But just make sure you're just pointing it to all the, the overall Nexus board, as well as the individual Scrum team boards. And you'll see down here, this is our initiatives board. And if we have time at the end, I'll sort of talk about that a little bit. Okay, so the rest of the wizard, you're just going to click through it, and it's basically going to pull all of your stuff in into a plan. And one of the first things you're going to want to do is now that we have all of our sources, what we need to do next is to actually map our teams, right? Our shared teams that we've created, and map those teams to the individual Scrum boards. So you can do that by clicking this little view button up here and go to your teams. And I had that pulled up, but let's just zoom into that really quick. Okay, so this is our teams configuration. Now, when you first create a board, it's going to add a bunch of other, it might add a couple other teams, and it'll say like plan only team. I actually want to remove those. So if you do have any plan only teams, just hit the little 3 dots and you can get rid of the teams. Those are teams that are just created to be used within the actual advanced roadmap plan. So they're actually not going to be usable outside of, anywhere outside of advanced roadmaps, which is why I suggest using the shared teams, because now we also have the ability to run, Jira queries based off of that field. And it's all seamless, right? So as we're making changes within advanced roadmaps on the team, that's also changing what board it appears, and what quick filters, right, are being that are being used on the overall Nexus board, to be able to just seamlessly switch between the two as you're making changes. So you want to, once you've removed all of your plan only teams, you're going to want to add back in your shared teams. So just click the add team button. You want to make sure you're on this first, add an existing shared team, and you'll select the team from the drop down here. The next thing you're going to want to do is make sure, and these are kind of the really important pieces of the of the configuration that you want to make sure you get right, that I see a lot of people sort of get confused about. Now, when this is really important, right, to make sure that the actual team that we're adding here, the shared team, also has the associated issue source. And this is where, I was sort of talking about, creating those individual Scrum team boards, and where it's important to link those individual team Scrum boards to the actual team. And you'll just want to make sure that they're, you're choosing the right methodology. Then this is where you can pop in their velocity and iteration length. In this case, they're all the same. You can pop in team members here if you want to make it look pretty, but it doesn't really have a whole lot of bearing on the actual tool itself. Okay. Oh, and the other, I saw another question also about, well, how do we sort of get sort of reports and metrics, right, if we have this overall project, right, at the Nexus level, and we have a board at the Nexus level? Well, then how do we start seeing velocities between, each independent team? Like, how do I know what to put in these things? And that's where our team boards come into play. So you can actually load up any one of these individual team boards. And if you go to the report section, all those reports will be reflective of just the things that fall into that filter. So for instance, if I went into the reports, we would be able to see the velocity, for just the back office team. And you can input that number on the actual roadmap itself. Okay. So I know there was a lot of other questions sort of about dependencies and how that stuff sort of works in Jira. So I think it'd be good to start, talking about that a little bit, right? And these are some of the things that we're going to be, discussing during our, the cross-team refinements, is identifying, some of those, what those cross-team dependencies are. And you can see, I played around with the configuration a little bit here. And you guys can, play around with this to your heart's content. There's lots of different options, ways to group things by. You can also add in these fields and these columns in here, and you can make all these changes just in real time, right? So this becomes a really important aspect and sort of like this visual landing place for the teams conducting a lot of these meetings. So for instance, maybe during your, the cross-team refinements, you might be identifying those, those cross-team dependencies. And within the tool, it's very easy to create those dependencies. You can actually hit the little plus button either in front of or behind, and you're just going to drag and drop, right? And it just creates that little dependency between the two. And in the back end in Jira, it's using the very familiar issue links that we all use, for blocked and as blocked by. And you can change that in the configuration as well to use different links if you choose. But that's essentially what it's doing, right? It's creating that linked issue relationship. But it's very easy to do just using this sort of drag and drop feature, right? And we can also visualize that. There are also built-in views down here, so you guys can take a look at this on your own Jira instance. And dependency management is a good one because it'll just filter out sort of the dependencies that we have mapped out on our boards, and we can sort of talk through those during the cross-team refinement, right? Maybe we can eliminate as many dependencies where possible, right? By either drilling things down smaller. The team can sort of talk through those things and work those things out during the refinement sessions. The other really useful view that I found for those particular meetings is using maybe viewing things by the team. And I think I had that loaded up in one of these other tabs. No, I don't. Okay, so if you go to the view settings, you can group by the team, and there's lots of different settings here. So I'm just going to select grouping by team, and you can actually see now we have our teams listed, and they're sort of in these swim lanes. So we have our back office team, driver team, down here at the bottom is the writer team. And it just shows the epics and the stories, right, that we actually have associated to those particular teams. And the really nice part is we can actually now see capacity. So we can, just all in one glance, we have sort of a one-stop shop for saying, hey, here's our upcoming sprint. Here's our sprint velocity. And here's how much we currently have allocated. So this is a really good place for sort of the teams to sort of, do that collaboration and say, oh, hey, maybe this team has a little bit extra capacity on this sprint. Hey, maybe we can help out, right? And take some of the burden off this other team. And you can quickly, switch between, particular story, and maybe the, driver team says, hey, yeah, we can take that on. Right, and you can just swap it over, and we can see our I think that was a huge one. So now they're loaded up. But you get the idea, right? This is a place to sort of do that collaboration, be able to easily view like where capacities kind of at with each team, and then sort of do that balancing act, right, of figuring out who's going to be working on what, dividing and conquering, working through our dependencies that we might have, all within the single place. Okay. So the next thing I want to talk about is sort of the forecasting piece, and sort of that bottom up intelligence, right? That we're often looking for, out of the tools. And the really nice part about advanced roadmaps is you can see, sort of as I've been making changes to all these different items, you'll notice here at the top right, there's this like review changes button that's blue with the number 7. And every time I make a change here, you can see that number will tick up. And what advanced roadmaps is actually doing is it's not actually writing those changes directly back to our Jira issues immediately. What you can actually do, what it's doing is it's actually tabulating all those changes that we're making, so that you have the opportunity to say, okay, this plan looks really good. Let's actually go publish this back. And what it does is it'll then allow you the opportunity to look through that list and publish those changes back to the Jira issues. And that gives you sort of a stopgap, right? To say, to sort of play around with the plan. You can play with what if scenarios. And there's a whole section for setting up those scenarios, so you can say hey here's what we currently have set in our timelines, well, which also, by the way, advanced roadmaps is going to be doing for you, right? It's going to be generating the start dates and due dates. And right now they're based off of the sprints, but you can actually also have it auto calculate. So you can actually hit this auto schedule button. You can have it set, and actually fill in and overwrite values for your sprints, releases, and teams, or you could just tell the tool, no, I only want the tool to fill in those values for things that we haven't filled out yet. So it can actually help you a little bit with actually doing sort of like future sprint planning. It's you just click a button and it'll take all that data that we're feeding it, right? So it's going to take a look at our scope of work and maybe the sizing that we've put in for each one of our PBIs along, and it'll take into account our individual capacities from the team level, and it'll sort of project out in these future sprints, hey, based off the data, here's when we think you're going to be able to complete this. And of course, once you've done that auto schedule, you can always go back and make any changes to the plan. So you can take a look at it and say, oh well, maybe this team needs to do this before then, and just make those adjustments as necessary. The other big benefit, right, is this roll up button. So I'm just going to flip the group back to none for a second. And I just wanted to point this out because, again, when we talk about sort of this bottom up intelligence, the teams are really sort of laser focused on sort of the really small increments of work, and just making sure that those things are being broken down, they're sizing them, they're figuring out and working out what sprint, what team's going to be working on which. But what we're really interested in is trying to figure out, okay, well, hey, we have this really big item. Based off of all the information that we have, can we get some kind of forecast, as to when we can actually start this thing and complete it? And that's really sort of one of the big benefits that you get out of a tool like this, right? Is that as the teams are sort of scheduling and filling in all their data about each one of the individual stories at a higher level, we're able to see sort of this roll up of dates and say, hey, now that the team has filled in all their information, we can see, hey, we can, we might be able to get this done around the 25th of November. And it can actually even go one level above that, which I think we're sort of running close to time here. But be aware, right, that Advanced Roadmaps has the ability to actually create hierarchies above epics. And you can name them however you want. You can call them whatever terminology. Some people, I think they used to call it initiatives. And initiatives really allows us to sort of roll up maybe multiple epics, right? That maybe multiple teams or even multiple nexuses are working on, and that also allows us visibility, right, to do some kind of forecasting at a high level to say, hey, based off the information that we have, here's when we think we might be able to complete this thing, and that's really sort of the beauty of the tool. Okay, so I think I don't want to run too much into Shari's time to talk about Confluence. So Shari, do you want to talk a little bit about that? I'll go back to the slide.
Sure. Thank you, Robert. Hey, I wanted to mention a question quick from Karsten about how to get to roadmaps. So you do need to have the roadmap in a plan that you have. If you're using Jira Software Data Center, Advanced Roadmaps for Jira is now included for free with Data Center. And if you're using the Atlassian cloud, you need to have either the premium or the enterprise plan. And Lawrence, thanks for bringing up Confluence, because that's what I'm going to talk about next with everyone. So let me share my screen. If Robert, can you let me share?
Oh,
thanks.
Yeah.
All right. So it's all about the data. It's one of the things I remind our clients of every day. There's no sense putting data into a tool if you can't use that information to your full advantage. And our team here at Fringe Technology is no different. We use the Atlassian tools to manage our own work. And even though the power of Jira is amazing, I have to say my favorite Atlassian product by far is Confluence. And I can't imagine a day without it, really. So when teams document information and knowledge in a way that becomes that single source of the truth, all it takes to clarify a doubt or answer a question is a simple reference back to that information in Confluence. And when you can do that, that's how you know you're doing it really well. This is what makes Confluence the perfect companion too for your Nexus. So setting up your space for your Nexus in Confluence doesn't need to be as structured really as the process, for instance, in Jira for doing something like road mapping. But you do want to make sure you get off to a good start and help each other have a space where you can create, collaborate, and share the information and knowledge for your Nexus. So the very first thing that you're going to do is create your Nexus space in Confluence. And the main tip that we can give you here is make sure you consistently name as far as possible your Nexus across all of the different places where you mention it. And remember also the relationship. So one single Nexus represents one product, one Jira project, and one Confluence space. So 111 across the board. And that'll also make it easy to help you identify everything. And keep in mind too, that when you're using this model for the mapping like this between the different products and your Nexus, it also lets you already have that foundation for when maybe you grow in the future, right? And you're adding, say, another product and an additional Nexus to your team. So one of the first things that we like to do is create a team roster. We have a big request for this when we're actually working with clients. And with teams being more remote and distributed now than ever before, you know, you can talk to each other about the best ways to be able to do this. One of the ways is to just have a simple list here in a chart in your Confluence page for the team roster to share information, you know, time zones, locations, roles on the team, anything you want. And you can also throw some additional info on there for collaborating together outside of Confluence. Additionally, if you happen to be using Confluence Cloud, you can also add profiles to your page. And then this way you can see the profile information your user has already added here. So this is just one extra benefit and a way to be able to do that. If you're using your tools connected to your own external user management like Azure, Microsoft AD or something, then the experience is a little bit different. And the table view here might actually work better for you. The next thing is creating a calendar. And I'm doing that over here on the working agreements page, which is another great page for you to get started right away. And we have a page of working agreements for each team, by the way, each of our 3 teams that are in our Nexus. And on this page, I've just done a really simple calendar here using a Confluence table, because in this example, this team didn't want to actually pay for something like an add-on product to use a calendar. You can, though, however, utilize, if you'd like, team calendars for Confluence. And I just want to show you how easy it is. Once you have your calendar created, I can actually add to my calendar the current sprint over here. Whoops, sorry, I have to pick, apologize here. I want to pick sprints, Jira Agile sprints. And it's over on my Jira server. And I'm going to pick the GCR app and it's going to be sprint. And as soon as I do that, woo, poof, awesome. So all of a sudden now my calendar has my current sprint over here running. And if I want to, I can also just click on this and go over and it'll take me right to the actual current sprint, which is really great. Keep in mind though that team calendars for Confluence is an add-on product. All right, so another step that you can take as soon as your roadmaps are ready over in Jira is you could actually also do the same similar process and create a page in Confluence that actually can display your roadmap. So over here on Confluence, I'm just going to be looking for the roadmap macro. And you want to make sure you use the one for advanced roadmaps. And then it's going to ask you for a URL here. So I'm going to go get that from Jira. There's a share as button right here. And I'm going to pick, I want to share my plan as Confluence. I'll generate a link and copy it and go back over here and paste it into Confluence. I'll do a preview to make sure it works okay. Yep, and insert. And that's how quick and easy I've just now put the roadmap for our Nexus right here embedded into a Confluence page. And this will update every time the page is refreshed. Pretty cool stuff, right? So now you've got some integration going on between Jira and Confluence, and it makes it easy to go back and forth. You could even drill down into actual issues here if you wanted to. So as you're going through and creating more documentation and guides for your team, another one is documenting your working agreements for each team. So I just came up with a little format that I used across my 3 different teams here, where they can all record their definition of done that they've come up with together, the business outcome goal for them, their team agreements, and then they've, like I said, developed their own sprint calendar here. But these are some of the key things that you want to make sure that the team has a place to document. So as you're continuing to build out your space with all the different project artifacts and agreements, and now you're getting into maybe more product documentation, one of the things that you're going to worry about sometimes is what things look like. And it's really not as important what they look like, but over time, you're going to find that if you have a similar type of documentation from it, for instance, maybe product requirements or product launch page, something like that for each release, that it will be nice if they look the same. And so up here in Confluence Cloud, for example, you can actually import your own existing templates if you want from Google Docs or Word, or you could use over almost 90 templates up here. And it's so easy just to find something. You could even just search on product and look at all of the pages here. And there's live examples of what the templates look like for you. And so you can just pick any one of these and try it out for your team. So this way, my point of all this part is that you're focusing on the content, right? And the information that you're trying to share with the team and collaborate on. And you don't, by using a template, you don't have to be concerned so much about what things look like. So I've been actually using Confluence for 16 years now, almost since it just came out back in 2004. And I've developed some tips that I just wanted to share with everybody. And the first one is encourage transparency and openness. So the first thing we see a lot of teams do is lock down their spaces with the space permissions. And we kind of hate to see that because it's really all about sharing and making sure that, people have access to information. And a lot of companies, you've probably worked at companies that do surveys with the team members, right? And one of their biggest complaints that they talk to management about is lack of communication. So really you're putting all this information out there. Usually it's not anything that's secretive or something like you're an HR team. Maybe you've got some information that's not shareable, but your Nexus certainly is. So try to keep things open as much as possible. And encourage each other to add useful content. Again, that's the most important thing. And if you see something that needs updated on your space, just go ahead and do it. Confluence keeps page history on every single page every time you save something. So at any point in time, you could always go back to something in the past. But don't pass the buck. If you see a typo or some content that needs fixed, just go ahead and out there and change it. And that's going to keep everything current and relevant for your team and accurate. The other big tip is try not to duplicate content. So what I mean is don't have the exact same content on one page and another page, because now what you're going to do is make it where people aren't consistently updating the documentation because it's going to be in 2 different places. And the other thing, if they're searching for the content up here in the global search in Confluence, they're going to find one page and maybe it won't be the one that's actually been updated recently. So that's another big tip for you. My last one is really all about labels. Labels are huge in Confluence. And I'll show you a couple examples of how here. I've got a sprint retrospective page template here that I was using. And it's automatically, if you use the template, it's going to put the retrospective label on there for you. I've also added the name of my team that this is for. All right. And what this does for me when you add page labels is it lets you add other macros on other pages where you can bring content into the page. And one of the examples of that is my blogging here. I actually am using a blog post template here where I can pull the content into this one area just for the driver team, just by telling it to go find the blog posts, right, that actually have the driver label on them. And when you start using labels like this, it'll be amazing how much it's going to save of your work time later on when you're trying to pull things together, whether it's reports or like this, just bringing things in and having them be relevant for your team. And the last tip is that even your templates that you use, you can go out and modify them. So this is the retrospective template that comes with Confluence as well to manage all your retrospectives. And the one thing that I always add to mine is the task report here, because sometimes you have action items, right, that are tasks that you define in Confluence on your retrospective pages. And so I come in and I edit the template that I'm using. It usually just comes with page properties report. I add a task report on here and I tell it to pull in all the unresolved tasks that I still have open for the team. And this again is just one way that you can use your Confluence space, customize it for your team as much as possible. Again, helping them to focus on the data that you're putting in there to share with everyone. And sorry it went so fast, but I want to make sure we have time to wrap up and everything. But you'll be surprised how quickly your teams will embrace Confluence as long as they know it's there and they have access to it. So you just watch it grow and evolve. And I think that's the best way for the teams to have a resource that's usable for them. So, okay, thanks everyone. And Ravi, I'm going to send back to you now.
All right, very good. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Shari. We had a jam-packed session, lots of concrete ideas that we hope you can apply. As if you've tried to do this, you will understand the complexity of integrating Scrum, Nexus, Atlassian, Jira with advanced roadmaps, and Confluence. This is not an easy task. We wanted to give you a quick flyby. So what do you do next? There are a bunch of questions that a lot of people have asked. So what we've done is, if you look at the chat panel, we've put answers to some of the most common questions with links. If you want to learn more about the approach that we discussed, the digital white paper is available free of cost. Go browse it. If you want to learn more about implementing Nexus, come join my upcoming class. The link is on the chat window. Ask us for help. If you have the budget for training, coaching, consulting, look at the contact information on the slides for Fringe Technology. These slides will be available on the Scrum.org webcasts page. The link is in the chat panel. If you want help with agile training, coaching, consulting, transformation, contact SmoothApps. Again, all the contact information will be on the slides, right? Scrum.org provides free curated content for your unique learning journey. Go to Scrum.org, find your learning path, keep learning. Even if it's one article, one resource a week, you'll be amazed how far you will get in a few months' time, all right? Follow up, join our community, follow us on social media, lots of high quality curated content coming out from Scrum.org to assist you in your journey. As we close our session, just to recap, we had a typical scaling scenario. People tried without Nexus, they ran into challenges. And then we told you the 10 decisions they made. We gave you a roadmap for using the Atlassian suite, and we told you what next. We don't have time for Q&A, but our contact information is there. Like I said, if you have budget, contact us and we'll set up an exploratory session. With that, I hope you found this useful. Thank you. Keep calm and Scrum on. See you at our next session.